Hello, I'm Yousef Otaiba, the UAE ambassador to the United States. I first met Rope's founder, Ben Birnbaum, back in November 2017, more than 3 years before the Abraham Accords were signed. He shared his vision for an organization that would connect emerging leaders from across the Middle East and beyond. And even then, it was clear that Ropes was ahead of its time, and that his mission was exactly what our region needed. Since that first meeting, I've had the pleasure of joining several virtual conversations with Ropes alumni. Every time I come away inspired by their energy, creativity, and optimism. The participants truly represent the kind of future we all want to see, one built on understanding, respect, and collaboration. The UAE shares that vision, a more peaceful, connected, and prosperous Middle East where cooperation replaces conflict and opportunity replaces division. The Abraham Accords were an important step in that direction. They showed the world what's possible when dialogue, trust, and mutual respect guide our actions. But real peace isn't just about agreements between governments. It's about people. It's about the relationships and friendships that organizations like Ropes help build every single day. We live in a region that has faced many challenges, but also one that holds enormous promise. And I believe that the next generation of leaders, many of whom are part of this network, will be the ones who turn that promise into progress. The UAE remains deeply committed to supporting stability, coexistence, and interfaith dialogue. These are the values reflected in our own diverse and thriving communities at home. And I've been proud to support Ropes and its mission for many years, and I hope you'll join me in continuing to back this important work. Thank you all, and congratulations on everything you've accomplished and continue to do.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Otaiba, for your friendship and support. We really wouldn't be here doing the work we're doing but for your early belief in our mission. And thank you to all of you for coming today. My name is Ben Birnbaum, and I'm the founder of Ropes. We are proud to have more than 300 people register for today's event. And I know that includes some people who have been following and supporting our work for years, and many others who might be tuning in for the first time. So for those of you who are just learning about us, Ropes is a movement of young leaders from across the Middle East and North Africa who share a vision of an integrated post-conflict region that fully includes the state of Israel and an independent state of Palestine. We run various people-to-people programs that bring together these young leaders, from our yearly summits to education programs for graduate students, to conflict journalism courses for reporters, to delegations to Israel and the West Bank for Arab emerging leaders. Through these various programs, we've built an alumni network of nearly 200 emerging leaders from Israel, the Palestinian territories, and 15 other countries across the region. These are leaders from the worlds of politics and business and culture and many, many other spheres. And you're going to be able to meet 4 of those incredible young leaders later in the program. We're here today to raise funds to dramatically expand Ropes' peace-building work in the year ahead, and we are currently 80% of the way toward our $1 million fundraising goal. If you are inspired by what you hear today, I hope you'll consider making a tax-deductible contribution at a level that's right for you. And I'm happy to announce that today, thanks to the generosity of our supporter, Sally Gottesman, the next $40,000 in donations to Ropes will be matched dollar for dollar. So in other words, if you want to sponsor a participant in one of our programs, you'll actually be sponsoring 2. If you'd like to make a contribution, simply use the QR codes in the top corners of the screen or visit ropes.org/donate. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to bring in Ropes Executive Director Ksenia Svetlova, who has helped bring this organization to new heights in her nearly 3 years in the role. Before joining Ropes, of course, Ksenia was a member of Knesset from 2015 to 2019 and was also a journalist who covered the Arab world for Israeli media. Ksenia, it's a pleasure to have you here. Please take it away.
Thank you very much, Ben, and thanks for Ambassador Otaiba, our long-standing supporter in something that we in Ropes believe that it's essential, and it's also an integral part of the developments that are happening right now in the Middle East. As always, there is never a dull moment in our region, and unfortunately, we experienced during the last 2 years too much pain, suffering, and horrors. We do believe that now it's indeed a rare moment in the timeline of the Middle East that can lead us to a better future, not only for the next generations, but also for those of us who live in the region, the Israelis, the Palestinians, and everybody else, all of the people of the Middle East who deserve a better chance. And we invited today our very special guest and friend, Yossi Klein Halevi, who perhaps is the best person to answer the very hard and difficult questions about what comes next. What comes next in terms of reconciliation? What comes next in terms of the dialogue that we have to have with each other in order to reach our goal of post-conflict, stable, and integrated Middle East? So Yossi Klein Halevi is a transformative figure in interfaith dialogue and Middle East policy. At the Shalom Hartman Institute, he co-directs the Muslim Leadership Initiative with Imam Abdallah Antepli, fostering crucial engagement between North American Muslim leaders in Israeli society. His work is defined by a commitment to reconciliation and deep listening. An acclaimed author, Yossi's New York Times bestseller Letters to My Palestinian Neighbor. If you didn't have a chance to read it yet, absolutely, you have to. It's a must. This book is a groundbreaking attempt to start a public conversation about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. His previous book, Like Dreamers, won the Jewish Book Council Everett Book of the Year award. With a career spanning journalism, policy analysis, and public service, Yousef brings a nuanced perspective to the region's most pressing challenges. He's a former contributing editor at the New Republic and writes for major American newspaper and publications. Yossi, the floor is yours. From the time that you published the book, The Letters to My Palestinian Neighbors, unfortunately, there were many letters, many dialogues, but also many wars and a lot of bloodshed. What are your insights specifically about this current period after the war in Gaza and before the big break into the new reality of peace?
Well, Ksenia, thank you very much for that warm introduction, and Ben and the whole team. Thank you for your courage and your goodwill. And in my experience, that's an unbeatable combination. And it's really my honor to be associated in any way with the work that you're doing. So, Ksenia, an enormous amount has changed since my book was published, and I've actually been thinking a lot lately about the post Yom Kippur War period, the post 1973 period, as a lens to try to understand what's happening in Israel and also what might happen in the region. And the parallels between 1973 and this time are really eerie in some ways. The obvious parallels are that we've experienced a surprise attack on our borders only twice, 1973 and on October 7th. And what was especially eerie about that, it was 50 years virtually to the day in which the Yom Kippur broke out, that the October 7th attack happened. And if you look at the mood in the Israeli public between 1973 and now, you'll also see some very powerful similarities. There was deep disillusionment with the political and military leadership after the Yom Kippur War, and of course, now in Israeli society, a longing, really a desperate longing for political change. And another parallel between Israel's situation in the immediate aftermath of Kippur and today is Israel found itself increasingly in the role of an international pariah. And at the same time, we can look at another potentially intriguing and hopeful parallel. When the Yom Kippur War ended, no one could have imagined that 4 years later, Israel and Egypt would be making peace. And no one could have imagined that that peace agreement would have its roots in the Yom Kippur War, which was one of Israel's most traumatic events. And yet, 4 years later, we had our first peace agreement with an Arab country, and not just any Arab country, but with Egypt, which had led the surprise attack on Israel. Anwar Sadat went from being the most hated man in Israel to instantly, literally overnight, to being one of the most beloved figures in Israel. And I think that that's important to remember in terms of what's possible in this region. That just as as really anything and any disastrous scenario that one wants to conceive of is possible in our region, but so the other inconceivable scenarios of hope and breakthrough are also possible. And what the tantalizing possibility today is of the end of the Sunni-Israeli conflict. Now, the Arab-Israeli conflict, the Middle East conflict for all these years really was defined by the Sunni-Israeli war. And if the Saudis join the Abraham Accords, we are looking at the effective end of this regional conflict. Now, obviously, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict remains unsolved, and increasingly, we're looking at a Shiite-Israeli conflict. But the conflict that we knew beginning in 1948, we are potentially on the verge of resolving that war, that 80-year war, and that is really an historic breakthrough that was inconceivable in the same way that peace with Egypt was inconceivable in 1973. Now, the caveat here is that in order for that to happen, we obviously need a new government in Israel. This is a government that is not built for peaceful breakthroughs, and the trauma for me, quite honestly, is that it would have been inconceivable even a few years ago to imagine that the major obstacle to a breakthrough, a regional breakthrough, and ending the Sunni-Israeli conflict would be an Israeli government. In the past, anytime there was a truly serious possibility for peace with any part of the Middle East, the Israeli government, including right-wing governments, eventually rose to the occasion and often initiated those breakthroughs. This is the first time that I can think of where the onus is truly on my side. And that's very painful. It's very painful to face. The implications for resolving the Palestinian tragedy are tantalizing here as well. We need to acknowledge, first of all, that the old Oslo model of a bilateral breakthrough in which the Palestinians and the Israelis sit down, work out their disagreements, and reach a breakthrough is over. And the truth is that model, the Oslo model, ended with the Second Intifada in the year 2000. The international community hasn't yet understood that the Oslo model is dead. But I think that the region understands that. And the only way that we're going to be able to begin to resolve the Palestinian tragedy, I believe, is through a regional context. Israel desperately needs Arab allies to help us navigate the serious security challenges that we will face with a West Bank Palestinian state in whatever form that state will emerge in. And the truth is it's premature to even speculate what that state might look like. but we need to begin the process of shifting the momentum away from a binational state in which basically in which Israel annexes the West Bank, and that's where this government is trying to move us toward, and to shift the momentum toward a different horizon. And I'll add parenthetically that what I find so hopeful and intriguing about ropes is that what you're offering is really a regional model in microcosm of what a regional peace agreement would look like. The only way that we can hope to begin resolving the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is in the context of the Arab-Israeli conflict. When I say that it's premature to move toward to really conceptualize a two-state solution, the most urgent, for me, the most urgent items on the agenda are making sure that the nightmarish scenarios of the Israeli far right are thwarted. And here I have to say that whatever else President Trump is doing to American democracy, whatever destructive role he's playing elsewhere, so far here, he has played a very important role, especially in putting a brake on the apocalyptic fantasies of the far right. Thanks to Trump, there is no longer a possibility of the far right rebuilding settlements in Gaza, let alone beginning a process of that the far right called voluntary emigration, but which we all know would have been a coerced expulsion, mass expulsion of Palestinians. And Trump, of course, played a very negative role initially in opening the way for the far right to begin imagining that it was possible to initiate a mass immigration of Palestinians. And fortunately, he very quickly backed down from his scenario of his fantasy of a Riviera without Palestinians in Gaza. So those are the issues that, for me, are most urgent. But at the same time, we need to begin laying the groundwork for an eventual regional peace and for Palestinian-Israeli relations. And the last point that I'll make, Ksenia, before we take questions, is that, I used to feel that the work of ropes was important primarily in the Arab world to help change attitudes toward Israel. Today, after October 7th, and given the government that we have, I believe that ropes has a no less crucial role to play for the Israeli public. Young Israelis need reasons to hope. And the despair here is very deep. The cynicism is very deep. And I know of no better antidote to that cynicism and despair than seeing young people from across the Middle East stepping up and courageously engaging with young Israelis. That's exactly the model that we need to help change attitudes, not only in the Arab world, but also in Israeli society.
Thank you very much for these words of inspiration, Yossi. We definitely need hope. Everyone in this region needs two things, I believe: therapy from the river to the sea, and hope also from the river to the sea. Dear friends, I remind you that you can address Yossi questions. Just put them in the Q&A box. There are some questions already there, and some were sent to us privately. I see already a question that is being addressed here, but first I want to remind you that you can make a tax deductible donation. Just use the QR codes that you see on the screen or go to our website, ropes.org. There is a match for $40,000, so anything that you will donate will be met with a match, dollar to dollar. Thank you very much to those who already did it from the beginning of this call, already have few donations. So thank you very much for that. And we'll begin with the questions that are published here already in the Q&A. Robert asks about the settler violence. Can you comment on that? Why cannot they just be arrested? Would the proposal of the death penalty for terrorists apply to the settlers who commit terrorist actions?
Great questions, and unfortunately, I don't have good answers, at least not satisfying answers. Of course, the settlers could be arrested. The Shin Bet knows, I'm sure, who the violent settlers are. Their hands are tied. You have the patrons of the most violent wing of the settlement movement sitting at crucial places in government. And this is also unprecedented. We've never had anything like this in Israel before, and this is a source of profound shame. And there are some noises in the last few days being made by Netanyahu and others in the government that they're aware of the problem. I hope that there will be international pressure on the government. And I don't usually welcome international pressure on Israel, but in this particular case, I'm so thoroughly ashamed and disgusted that we need to address this urgently.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Indeed, a difficult question. I will just add, as a former lawmaker, that for now, the current bill only discusses the death penalty for Arabs, not for Jews who commit terrorist acts. It's not likely that this bill will cross the threshold of the Supreme Court, and nevertheless, the mere reality that this bill is being discussed right now in our Knesset, where I used to sit there just a few years ago, it makes me shiver, frankly. Edward asks a question about a centrist government. Can a centrist government emerge in Israel's current political climate?
Well, this is the great hope for the future, and every poll shows that the current government is very far from being able to reconstitute a government after elections. There are no credible polls that give this government a parliamentary majority, and many polls do give the opposition a slight majority. There are additional polls that show some kind of a stalemate, which is of concern. But Israel post October 7th has shifted to the right. The former left-wing Meretz party, which is united with Labor to form the Democrats, is now headed by a former general. And for Meretz in the past, that was inconceivable. And that's just one indication of how the entire political system has shifted rightward. The possibility of an alternative coalition to this government would really be trying to reconstitute in some fashion the coalition of Naftali Bennett, and it would be Bennett who would presumably head the next government. And I think that also tells us something about where Israel is at today, is that the alternative to Netanyahu is himself right-wing. But he is right-wing in the sense that his first commitment is to the healing of Israeli society. And so Bennett's vision of a future government would really be the government that he and Yair Lapid put together in 2022, which was Israel's most heterogeneous government. The one caveat here is that a future centrist government, and by center I mean a government that includes the left, Yair Golan, the center, Yair Lapid, center right, Lieberman, and presumably Benny Gantz, and Eisenkot, who's center left, headed by a right-wing politician, Naftali Bennett. What's missing from that constellation is Mansour Abbas, the head of the Islamic Party in Israel. And he, of course, was part of the 2022 coalition, but the parties today, the opposition parties, the Jewish opposition parties, feel that the Israeli Jewish public would not accept the presence of an Arab party post October 7th. And that, I think, is a tragedy. I think it's a tragedy for Israeli society. It's a tragedy for the opposition because if you include Mansour Abbas's party, you have a very comfortable majority. And so excluding Mansour Abbas from the next coalition is really very self-defeating. But the opposition parties are reading the mood of the Jewish public, and I think, unfortunately, they're reading that mood correctly.
Holly Farber from Minnesota asks, can you talk more about the response and the contrast of the public response to the past 2 years in the wider Middle East versus the West?
So the question is the response in the Arab world to Israel. Is that the question?
I think that, the idea is, yes, that to the war in Gaza, basically, what was the public response in the wider Middle East and versus the West and what happened there.
So, hi, Holly. Nice to hear from you. It seems to me that there is a split between the response of the Arab street and the response of Arab elites. The response on the Arab street, and again, I'm offering a very superficial impression. Ksenia, if you could shed more light on this, I'd appreciate it. But my impression is that there is widespread horror toward the war on the Arab street, and a great deal of anger toward Israel. Among Arab elites, the reaction, I think, has played out very differently. I think there is an appreciation, perhaps grudgingly so, but nevertheless an appreciation for Israel's ability to reclaim the strategic high ground after experiencing the worst strategic blow in our history, the most devastating blow to the credibility of our deterrence, our military deterrence. Today, the strategic picture in the Middle East looks drastically different than it did on October 8th. And I also think that there's an appreciation for the fact that Israel is the only real guarantee that against Iranian expansionism and against a nuclear Iran. So I think there is this split on the part of the elite and the public. Does that ring true for you, Ksenia?
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, we will be joined very soon by 5 amazing groups, alumni from Arab countries, who will, I think, contribute also their ideas about, the public response and also the expectation for the current time.
So in terms of comparing the responses in the Middle East to the West, I was in Morocco shortly before October 7th. And again, I don't know if this would be true today, but I felt completely comfortable wearing my kippah everywhere in Morocco. I felt more comfortable as a public Jew in Morocco than I would certainly in Western Europe, anywhere in Western Europe, and probably in many places in the United States today as well. So we may be approaching a very surrealistic moment where Israelis, Jews might feel more comfortable in parts of the Middle East, and that's certainly true in the UAE today, and perhaps elsewhere in the Middle East than we do in parts of the West. And I never thought that would be the reality, and yet here we are.
Also, Ropes had an experience this year in Morocco. We brought a group of 30 Israeli, Palestinian, and Arab delegation, 30 students to Morocco, and it was in the midst of the war. We did feel welcome. We were approached with some questions, some of them were difficult questions, but we never felt in any danger or unsecure. Ken Schulman asks, the current ceasefire between Israel and the Hamas was driven largely through multilateral external pressure, the US on Israel and Qatar, Turkey, Saudi on Hamas. Can we count on this coalition of strange bedfellows to maintain their presence and trilateral pressure?
You know, I'm so skeptical of more deeply involving Turkey and Qatar. And these are the countries that have been the support system for Hamas, and I just see more mischief ahead if they deepen their involvement. There are whisperings about transformation in Qatar. I'll believe it when I see it. That would certainly be a blessing. But until that happens, I would be very, very wary of continuing to depend on their goodwill.
Well, we have many more excellent questions from our viewers and guests. However, we are very short on time, and unfortunately, I will need to thank you, Yossi, very much for your words, for your wisdom, for your support of Ropes. And we will continue hearing from you, hopefully, with more positive results next time. We in Ropes are certainly working very hard to make this a reality, make this dream of intra-regional connections, a web of connections that will just sustain better reality in which there will be not only formal peace, but a real peace between people who know each other, know how to work with each other, disagree with each other at some points, but agree about the necessity of a shared future and shared work for the sake of that. So that's what we in Ropes are working on. We had this year 3 major programs, 2 of them a week long. These are programs for students that focus on conflict resolution and the study of the Middle East as a unit, as a region, with the focus on connections between various parts of the Middle East. And each time we bring a few dozens, 30 or even more young people from across the region, young stars, leaders who, right now already serve in different places in their respective countries. And they're making a difference already, whether they lead as in student bodies, whether they are young professionals who work with governments as advisors, journalists, and so on. So these are the programs that we had. One in Morocco earlier this year, I mentioned that. In France, we just had this delegation in September this year. And also there was a summit for alumni of Ropes, and you will be meeting shortly.
But without further ado, I want to bring in some of the nearly 200, a few of the almost 200 young leaders who make up the Ropes' growing network. We have young leaders from the worlds of politics, business, culture, everyone from venture capitalists to members of parliament to leading journalists and entrepreneurs. And we're going to be joined by 4 of them right now. Ahmed, are you with us?
Hi, Ben. It's good to be with you. Thank you.
It's great to have you. And Ahmed, who is Skyping in, or I should say Zooming in from Egypt. He is not just a Ropes alumnus, but he is our new Director of Alumni Relations, and we're proud to have him on the team. Ahmed previously served as an advisor for several constituencies that focus on the youth, peace, and security agenda across the United Nations system, where he also headed the UN Economic Social Council Youth Forum in New York between 2022 and 2023. He has worked for governments from Egypt to Saudi Arabia to many others. He is a former residence and fellow of the program on negotiation at Harvard and holds a master's degree in international relations from Boston University. And Ahmed, maybe just as a starting point, maybe can you say a few words about what about Ropes inspired you to join? You participated in our summit last year in Baku, Azerbaijan. Why did you want to become part of this organization?
Thank you, Ben, for the introduction. I remember when I met you a few years ago, prior to the Abraham Accords, you presented me Ropes, and it was indeed a unique opportunity for me because it drew, a feeling that no other organization had before. Politics have failed us, and I believe that this organization is just working as a track 1.5. Bringing officials and also young leaders from across the region through conversations, through dialogues, to have some sort of a shared potential, sharing shared stories and having a genuine connection between them, and that deeply moved me forward to be part of the organization, because it's you don't have such space where you have Israelis and Arabs and Palestinians as well from across the region sharing the same space, speaking freely. And this is what matters, that everyone could criticize in Ropes. Everyone has, a storytelling that is different from the others, and everyone at least is sharing the same future for everyone, which is prosperity, peace, and security.
And Ahmed, you are from Egypt, which of course was the first country to make peace with Israel back in the late 70s. And one thing I would tell Emirati and Bahraini officials very early on in the days of Ropes, before the Abraham Accords, is I said, the unfortunate thing is that when Israelis are asked to imagine what peace with an Arab country would look like, when they're thinking about Saudi Arabia or other places, the only templates they have in their mind are the pieces with Egypt and Jordan, which were unfortunately very cold pieces. So I'm wondering if you could say a particular word about the situation in Egypt. Do you see any green shoots, any reasons for hope? And how might any elements of progress been interrupted by the war in Gaza?
Well, I would start by saying that, the Egyptian-Israeli peace treatment is a role model for peace in the region. Back in 1979, I don't think that any of the Egyptians and Israelis were believing that peace was possible. Yet, it's a long-standing, peace agreement for over 40 years now, maybe 50 now. And it's showing that, regional stability through economics, politics, and energy, and all other type of international relations settings are working. However, after October the 7th, things have dramatically changed for a number of political reasons that are known for everyone. Most of the Egyptians have long feared that Israel's ultimate objective is to transfer the Gazans to Egypt, which is a red line for Egyptians. However, most Egyptians were also against October the 7th, and they were they had a long-standing empathy with, the Gazans and the Palestinians to have their independent state. There are some, of course, optimism that is in place. For the first time in years, I feel that the Egyptians are differentiating between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. They're trying to differentiate between the Jews as a religion and the Zionism as a political agenda, which has become very extremist in the past years. This is why Ropes is important, because we want to connect and we want to share these ideas and these, concerns. On another, aspect, I can see that tourism and the cultural exchange have been on the rise in recent years to Egypt, especially from the Jews, after the government has mobilized tremendous funds to renovate the synagogues in Cairo and Alexandria. And I know many of my friends who have freely visited those, sites. And people welcome Jews in Egypt, and this is what matters. So yes, as an answer, I see hope, and this is where we should be building on.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. And I now want to bring in Farah Badur from Amman. Farah, are you with us?
Yes, Ben.
Thank you so much, Farah. And Farah is a political analyst and conflict resolution specialist with more than 15 years of experience in peace building, mediation, and regional diplomacy. She is currently a non-resident fellow at the Israel Policy Forum. Her work focuses on Jordan-Israel relations, cross-border security dynamics, and practical dialogue frameworks that connect policy to communities. She formerly served as a senior advisor at the United States Institute of Peace and continues to advise governmental and international stakeholders on people-to-people peace building, dialogue, and reconciliation. And some of you might have seen Farah on the webinar that we co-hosted with the Israel Policy Forum just a couple months ago. And Farah, I want to ask the same question that I asked to Ahmed, because Jordan, of course, is the other country that made peace with Israel before the Abraham Accords, but it's been a very mixed bag. Obviously, a big success, certainly on the security front, and it has held up remarkably well despite many challenges. But as you well know, many of your fellow Jordanians, they would not be caught dead coming to Israel as you have in the past. And so I'm wondering, how do you view things going forward for Jordanians? Are there any changes, any reasons to be hopeful? And how do we correct the mistakes that were made with Egypt and Jordan in the future as we work toward a future in which both the state of Israel and hopefully a state of Palestine are at peace with each other and are at peace with the broader region?
All of that, Ben. In 5 minutes. Okay. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for joining. I think in order to understand Jordan-Israel relations, we need to take a step back and understand where we are in this regional moment and the multiple challenges that Jordan needs to navigate, which directly and indirectly influence its relation with Israel and the calculations it has on the Jordanian-Israeli file. And I think the best way to describe this moment in the region is through the image of entrapment, that there is a shared condition of entrapment that it's felt by all regional countries, where they are trying to navigate these tunnels, trying to find the light at the end of the tunnel, trying to find refuge and security. And I think this image applies equally on Jordan, which try to navigate different tunnels all at the same time. Some of these tunnels are darker than the others, but they are all marked with the same, sense of an anxiety that we are surrounded by failed or failing states and non-state actors challenging the authority of these states. So if we look at Lebanon, with the recent failure of the Lebanese government to disarm Hezbollah, let alone the Palestinian militias and refugee camps, the whole notion of disarmament and achieving this goal by the end of this year seems more and more impossible. And we have seen how Hezbollah, for example, reacted to this situation, and we have seen the recent assassination of Haytham al-Tabtabai. So we have an indications that the situation in Lebanon going to deteriorate, and the security operations in Lebanon by Israel going to broaden, and the domestic scene will be vulnerable to an instability. And instability in Lebanon will have direct impact on Jordan. Just in the past couple of months, Jordanian authorities uncovered a terrorist cell operating inside the kingdom that received its training in Lebanon. We don't know whether the training was done by Hamas in Lebanon or by Hezbollah, but we know that both they coordinate very closely with Iran. So this is just to show you that there is a direct connection between instability in the region and in Jordan. In Syria, the same thing. The situation have a direct impact on Jordan's stability. Jordan and Syria, they share 280 kilometers of border. Jordan is the host of 1.3 million Syrian refugees. So instability in Syria will have not only a security aspect, but also a social aspect, with radicalization and political unrest might be transferred to refugee communities, and not, let alone talking about the cross border, smuggling in terms of weapons and the drugs. When it comes to, the other front, on the Israeli-Palestinian side, of course, this is the most critical issue for Jordan. I think most of people here are following the situation in Gaza, and there are serious concern about the moving to the next phase of President Trump 20-point plans, and the whole issue of the International Stabilization Force, and the issue of who's gonna disarm Hamas, and whether it's going to be done through a political consensus or by force. And just like Hezbollah, Hamas is also challenging releasing the notion of releasing arms, which really deepen the divisions between not only Hamas and Fatah, but also among all the militant factions in Gaza. And from a Jordanian perspective, there is the concern of what is being labeled as the Gazification of the West Bank, meaning that the dynamics in Gaza might be replicated in Jordan's own backyard in the West Bank during a time when the West Bank is dealing with its own security and the humanitarian issue. We're talking about settlers' attack, Israeli operation, even Palestinian factions challenging a very weak PA. So from a Jordanian perspective, there is a concern about a security situation where it deteriorates to the point where Jordan will be forced to play a security or administrative role in the West Bank. Of course, this is a scenario that the Jordanians dismiss at any cost. There is also a concern of another scenario, which is annexation, or creating the conditions that will facilitate population transfer, whether collectively or individually, that will jeopardize Jordanian demographic integrity. And then there is the issue of, the cross-border radicalization and how that's going to influence the social cohesion in Jordan. So whenever Jordan looks at, its relation with Israel, there are multiple challenges that it needs to process at the same time, and it will factor how it responds to Israel, especially under the extreme government. But very interesting development that we are seeing on a Jordanian public, because in the last month, a local organization issued a survey viewing Jordan's views and support for Jordan-Israel peace treaty. And there was a very interesting and surprising, actually, number. At the beginning of 2024, the number of Jordanians who said that they support maintaining Jordan-Israel relations, it was 29.3% of people who were supporting that notion. A year after, this number nearly doubled. We're talking about 53% of Jordanians who are in support of keeping and maintaining the Jordanian-Israeli peace treaty. Now, we cannot interpret this as an affinity for Israel, but we can interpret this, result in Jordanian people understanding of the strategic importance of Jordan-Israel relations and their survival instinct for stability and security. So there are hopes, along the way of using these structures and arrangements that could help us, moving forward and achieving more stability and security for both countries and both peoples.
Thank you so much, Farah, and we are really honored to have you in our network, and you are so well-spoken every time I hear you. I now want to bring in Taha Al-Hadari. Taha, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Coming to us from Morocco, and one of our newest alumni, strategic, multifaceted, and socially committed. Dr. Taha is a leader in cloud computing who bridges the gap between corporate innovation and civic impact, with a PhD in applied linguistics from Germany and an engineering degree from Morocco. Taha combines both social and scientific approaches to life. He's the owner of an IT startup, in addition to being a Microsoft product manager. He leverages deep industry expertise grounded in his previous tenure at Microsoft to drive growth and strategic development. He is also the president of Ed in Morocco, which is a Moroccan NGO. And Taha, you participated in our program earlier this year in Morocco, and apparently you had a good enough experience that you joined us again in Romania in August. And I'm wondering if you could just say a word about why you were motivated to participate in ROPE's programs and what you took away from those two experiences.
First of all, thank you so much for the introduction. And in answer to your question, this was not the first time that I joined a program that has Israelis and Palestinians all together, in addition, of course, to other people from other regions in the region, in other countries in the region. And it was really an eye-opening event for me. It was the first time that I not only experienced it by hand, but I also get to actually talk to people from the region and get to know the story from their own perspective. My entire life, it was just about reading about the conflict, about what is going on, and watching news that may or may not be true from both areas. But it was the first time that I actually get to experience this. And so it was a moment when I decided that I wanted to know more and I needed to get a better perspective in order to get or build my own viewpoint about this. So I ended up finding ROPE's program for education that happened in Morocco in February. And that was an amazing experience. The hosts, the staff, the speakers and whatnot, they were all very, very enlightening. And the fact that I got to meet so many diverse and a multi-pot of cultures in one place helped me a lot to get a bigger perspective about things. And as Professor Klein said in his presentation, Morocco has always been a place for coexistence and for where Jews, Muslims, Christians, and any kind of religion or any kind of belief are actually accepted and welcomed. So it only made sense to actually get to know more the other and to better understand the world and get a better perspective on things.
Thank you, Taha. And we're running a bit over time, but maybe just a brief word on how things have developed in Morocco since the Abraham Accords. Obviously, Morocco, as you say, has a long history with the Jewish people, but it's new to have an Israeli embassy. How do you think things are going? Maybe just like a 30-second response.
Absolutely. It is true that it only recently started the political part, but looking through the history of Morocco, there has always been a Jewish community in Morocco. There's in every single major city in Morocco, there is a neighborhood called Millah, where Jewish people used to coexist with Muslims with no problems. So yes, only recently that there was an embassies opening up in Rabat, but the reality is both countries have co-worked on several things for years. It's maybe now they have put it into perspective and actually put something in real life. But we all know that it has always been a big part of Morocco. I also know that there are a lot of Jewish people that are either first generation, second generation, or even third generation now that are Israelis that know that their roots come from Morocco and from other regions, of course, in the Arab world. So it's not something new. Perhaps just we put a new label on it now, but it's something that has been long-standing for many years.
Thank you so much, Taha. And I want to remind everyone that you can directly sponsor a participant like Taha, like Farah, like Ahmed, like Mohammed in our programs. If you want to directly sponsor a participant in a week-long program, that's a $2,500 donation, or you can sponsor a participant in one of our 4-day programs like our summits for $1,800. And as mentioned earlier today, thanks to a matching grant, the next $40,000 in donations to ROPES will be matched dollar for dollar. So if you sponsor one participant, you're actually sponsoring two. And I really want to encourage people who maybe have been following us for a while and like what they see from us to consider becoming a supporter. We do a lot with a little as an organization, as a young organization, but we want to take the successful model that we have built, that we have really pioneered over the past 5 or 6 years, and have it succeed at a much wider scale. We now have nearly 200 emerging leaders from Israel, the West Bank and Gaza, and 15 countries across the region. And we want to grow that network. And not only are we bringing new young leaders into our network, we are now trying to invest through Ahmed's efforts in the alumni that we have by getting behind alumni-led initiatives that involve solving challenges in various fields, from environment to Gaza reconstruction to entrepreneurship, in a way that reinforces cooperation between Israelis, Palestinians, and the wider region. So I really hope you'll consider supporting us at a level that is right for you by using the QR codes or going to ropes.org/donate. And just on a closing note, I will tell you that I'm taking this call right now from France. And I am honored to be the grandson of 3 Holocaust survivors who really endured some of the worst of what humanity has to offer. And I think if you had told my grandfather when he was in the camps, or anyone who was living through that dark period, that within just a couple of years and just a couple of decades, the prospect of war in Western Europe would become unimaginable, they would have looked at you like you have 2 heads. But that is the reality we are living today, where, at least for the vast majority of Europe, war is a thing of the past. And we believe that a similar transformation can take place in the Middle East, as hard as it is to see today, but it's going to require a new generation of leaders, and it's going to require the participation of the wider region. We can't just try to solve this conflict, as Yossi said, bilaterally between Israelis and Palestinians. We need the involvement of the region's governments, and we need the involvement of the region's young leaders. So the people that you heard from today, they may not yet represent a majority in their societies with their pragmatic approach, but it's not a small minority anymore. And we want to make that voice bigger and louder. Until Ropes came on the scene, if you were a young Arab leader in a country like Saudi Arabia or Egypt who wanted to work with both Israelis and Palestinians to work toward a settlement in a post-conflict region, there was no organization for you. We want to be that voice for this young generation of Arab and Israeli leaders who want a post-conflict region. So please consider making a contribution at a level that is right for you, and feel free to respond to the emails we are going to send if you want to learn more and have a call with me or Ksenia to learn more about our work. But with that, I want to thank everyone who has donated on today's call, thank all of our alumni, thank Yossi Klein Halevi, and thank all of you for joining us. Salam and shalom.